5 left. And those numbers generally designate the magnetic bearing or heading of the runway, just to give pilots an idea of how the runway is oriented. So that's how those numbers get set up. And there is an instrument landing system on 7 Lima 25 Romeo. In terms of facilities, we've got around 392 hangars, 249 tie downs, 9 shelters, and just over 500 based aircraft. And those are based aircraft are ones that essentially call Livermore their home. So in terms of the airport's operating mission, we strive to provide a safe, efficient, environmentally sensitive, and economically self-sustaining air transportation facility that's responsive to aviation and community needs. LVK is designated as a reliever airport. And by reliever airport, what we mean is a facility that's designed to provide relief or additional capacity to a region when primary commercial service airports, such as San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, reach capacity. In most cases, a reliever airport is an existing one that's designated to handle a specific class of aircraft, such as general aviation. And Livermore is a general aviation airport. Our air operations, we are open 24/7. We do have FAA tower operations from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And a variety of general aircraft use the airport. Last year, we had just over 150,000 annual operations. And that makes us among the top busiest airports in the nation, not just California, but in the nation. A lot of military, government, corporate business, flight training, and private recreational. I do remember that we had one of the airport or Air Force One jets, or one of the presidential jets fly in here during the election time. So we get visited by some prominent folks. This graph right here shows you some information about our operations. It goes from 1990 to 2020. And the 3 lines, red, blue, and green, the red depicts total operations. And I apologize if you can't see the numbers, but at the very top, we're just under 300,000. And at the very bottom, we're just around 125,000. So that's sort of the range. And as you can see, since the early 90s, as a general trend, our operation levels have been steadily declining. In terms of based aircraft, the blue line shows how many aircraft have been based here, and that generally hovering around the 100 mark, though it has dipped down a little bit. And then the green line shows sort of a compilation of noise complaints that the airport has received over the years. When the airport master plan was updated around 2005 to 2008, we did get a much higher amount of noise complaints that seemed to be on people's mind a lot more. But generally, noise complaints somewhere in the 50 to 100 average is what we typically get. And those have been going up recently because of the press information that we've been having, but we're able to monitor and address those as they come in. So the reach of the airport is actually much further than regional. You can hop on a Learjet if it's capable of flying to the East Coast and do a nonstop flight out east. You can fly to Hawaii. What we don't have right now is the ability to receive international travel. So there's no customs facility. So if someone were to fly in from another continent, they couldn't initially land at Livermore. They'd have to go through a customs airport first. In terms of the air traffic control tower, the tower is operated by FAA and is, again, open between 7 to 9. They're conducted under FAA rules and regulations and governed and enforced by the FAA. When the tower is not in operation, what happens is pilots communicate with each other over their radio through frequency 118.1. And that essentially allows pilots incoming to let other pilots know that they're arriving, what direction they're arriving from, and what their planned, if they're just going to do a touch and go or land and stay. As well as pilots departing, they can announce they're departing and their direction of departure. This graph right here shows some general air traffic patterns that pilots are supposed to use. And FAA provides rules and guidelines that mandate where aircraft should circle, where they should approach, when they should make their final turns, and how they should come into to the airport. The blue lines, and I apologize, they're not real visible, but the blue lines are departures, and the red lines are arrivals. So as you can see, a lot of the traffic is up over the north of town for the bigger runway, and some of the traffic on the south side is through just south of the lakes and a little bit west of town. As we have prevailing west winds, in other words, the winds generally come out of the west and airplanes take off into the wind, most of our airplanes are taking off and landing from an east to a west direction. So that's typically the pattern. And just as a caveat, pilots are supposed to use that when they're taught how to fly and get their license. They're educated in flight patterns and stuff. But if there was a safety situation or an extremely high number of aircraft in the area, they can deviate from these in order to accommodate whatever situation they're arriving or leaving in. We also provide disaster service relief. We have the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Aviation Squadron, Civil Air Patrol, and the Alameda County Sheriff's Squadron there. It plays an important role in supporting various other emergency services, such as East Bay Regional Park, CHP, California Department of Forestry, Angel Flight, and medical rescue operators such as CalStar. PG&E was also using the airport when they were doing some inspections during the fires to check their facilities out in the area. It is LBK is designated as a key disaster airport hub in the event of a catastrophe. One example, when we had the Wine Country fires, it was a Civil Air Patrol base here. So it does provide a very much needed local base for aircraft travel during an emergency. The airport is a self-supporting enterprise, and by that we mean that the city owns and operates the airport, and capital budgets as well as reserves. They're all entirely user-funded through land, hangar lease revenues, fuel sales. There are also federal aviation and state funds that do come on occasion through grants and a very regulated program. But the airport doesn't receive general fund or local taxpayer monies. I say local because federal aviation funds are U.S. tax-based, but that's not essentially a local tax for the airport. In a 2001 study, the airport contributed approximately $34 million through direct and $57 million indirectly to the local economy, and supported approximately 577 jobs. So the airport, both directly and indirectly, does have a huge economic benefit to the area. And it infuses revenue funds into the city, the county, city, and school district through an annual distribution of property and possessory interest taxes. The way those taxes get divvied up, so I'm not exactly sure what the formula is, but it's around 1%, a little over 1% of the value of all the aircraft owned gets distributed back into the Livermore School District, City of Livermore, Alameda County, and other special districts. In this example, and this is fairly old, in around 2002 or 3, $800,000 were distributed through this venue, and the City of Livermore received approximately $130,000. So this is just sort of a general example of how the funds get divvied up. This shows the most recent tax revenues that just the City of Livermore has received. And we pulled this out of our budget yesterday, budget numbers, and you can see it ranges from 130,000 up to almost 370,000. And year to date, thus far in 2021, we're at around 260,000. So those are funds that the city also gets directly, and then the school district and the county also gets their share. We have a wide variety of customers. So you can see everybody from Chevron to Walmart to the labs, Fremont Bank, General Electric. There's a whole lot of people that use Livermore Airport as a means for their aircraft operations. So it does provide a very valuable asset for a lot of the businesses in the region and in the state. And in continuing economic benefits, we're always helping with business growth by providing flexible and efficient direct air transportation. It's estimated that 1 in 7 jobs in the Bay Area is indirectly tied to aviation. Economic benefits typically increase as the economy improves. So expecting somewhere around of a 25% growth in the next 15 years. And we'll be called upon to serve the growing air transportation needs of local businesses and area residents well into the future. There are youth opportunities at LVK. We have the Scouts. We have Boy Scouts of America Aviation Explorers. We have the Experimental Aircraft Association for pilots who like to build their own airplanes and take those out for a flight. Youth flying scholarships, robotic programs, and then the science, technology, and education math program is out there as well. Some of the big events that we have, there's World War II Heritage Aircraft flights sometime in around Memorial Day. That typically is held by one of the tenants there out on their front area. We do have vintage aircraft display days. You can tour the tower if you'd like by appointment, if you want to go up and have a look-see at what the FAA operations look like. Airport Day and Air Show, which is typically in October, can generate greater than 10,000 visitors. One of the recent ones that occurred was the AOPA West Coast Fly-In in 2019, which was very, very well attended. That's a West Coast regional event that has a lot of people flying in, and I believe that's Aircraft Owner Pilots Association, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a very successful event. A little bit about noise here. So one of the things we need to remind ourselves is that federal law prohibits the city from denying or limiting access to any type and class of aircraft that can safely use the airport 24 hours a day. So it's not like we can say somebody can't come in because we think they're going to be a little loud or a little big. There are weight limit restrictions and size restrictions. So an aircraft that's too heavy for the airport and is not permitted to land on this airport shouldn't be landing here. And we could certainly advise them that that we're not an airport that can accommodate their traffic. And the city can't technically impose noise-related regulations, curfews or penalties. Airport staff works diligently with pilots and flight instructors to communicate noise abatement procedures, quiet flying techniques, and the need to avoid residential area overflights whenever safely possible. And the city does have a voluntary restraint from night flying policy to avoid aircraft operations between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. to help preserve the quiet time. Right now, we are preparing to conduct a noise monitoring study that will have off-site monitors both in Pleasanton, Dublin, and here at the airport beginning this month. We'll take samples this month and in November, and then follow it up again next year and compare those to some previous studies to see what the noise levels are looking like. One thing we may also look at that we're considering is long-term noise monitors at the airport, which would be permanent monitors located at either side of the runway, so we can tie noise levels to a certain operation or one aircraft or another, and that'll help us keep a track of information from a noise point of view. One of the things that gets distributed, and when anybody purchases a home in the area, and I'll show you the map of the area, this is one of the disclosures that they get. So as a property owner, and I recently purchased a home and I remember reading this, the property is presently located in the vicinity of an airport within what is known as an airport influence area. The property may be subject to airport operations, for example, noise, vibration, and odors. Individual sensitivities to those noises can vary from person to person. You may wish to consider what airport annoyances are associated with the property before you complete your purchase. So homeowners or home buyers are advised of this prior to purchasing their house. And the Alameda County Airport Land Use Commission's airport referral area map show areas where there's likely to be impact. And this is essentially a map of it. You can see everything sort of north of Stanley, south of this line. East of this section over here and west of that, all this area includes what is known as the airport referral and influence area. And that's basically just to let people know that there is an airport there. You can't expect aircraft, and occasionally there may be loud aircraft. What we do as an active efforts to help with noise abatement is we have monthly tenant newsletters. So we advise tenants of the noise rules or the noise guidelines that we have. During pilot and instructor meetings, information is given out. There's pilot websites that we can post information on, flight planning guides, and letters to pilots, etc. This is an example of something that went out. We are looking to update this to make sure that the lines and boundaries are in the correct area. And it's just a general advisory for operators of airplanes when they come into and out of the Livermore Airport, what areas to avoid. The pink areas are more highly populated residential areas or business community areas. And so this kind of gives pilots a bird's eye view of what direction they should exit the area in and things like that. So this is the type of communication we'd like to get out to pilots to keep them informed of where things, where areas that we'd like them to avoid. There are a little bit of upcoming developments. So currently Five Rivers Aviation, which is an FBO at the airport now, is constructing their phase 2. That has already begun. And recently there was a restaurant opened up, Elevation LVK. I understand they're doing very well, although COVID certainly had an impact on everybody. They're doing the best they can right now, and we did open that up in 2020. There is a potential development with Kaiser Air. We haven't yet received their application. We're expecting that sometime in the near future. And we do also have some geometry improvements scheduled for 2022 through 2024. And those will include some airfield markings and signage and general safety improvements for all users. This is a picture of the Five Rivers Aviation FBO offices and lounge. It's just immediately west of the administration building out on the airport. When we say FBO, what we mean, it's a fixed-based operator, which essentially is a private air terminal, provides hangars for aircraft storage, fuel and ground support services for aircraft. So mechanics and maintenance operations go there. Ground transportation, if folks would like it, accommodations and flight catering, and concierge service for visitors. So it's basically a welcoming mat and a service garage for folks that fly into the area. This is a quick picture of our administration building, which was recently completed. It houses the airport administration staff, a conference room, as well as our new restaurant, Elevation LVK. And there's a nice sunset shot of it with their lights up and people properly socially distanced at outdoor dining. In summary, so LVK is a modern air transportation facility and gateway to the Tri-Valley. The airport is a safe and efficient community asset, providing significant economic benefits to the Tri-Valley for over years. And it provides convenient facilities and aircraft support amenities that include flight training, private commercial flight cert programs, a home base for privately owned aircraft, emergency medical and evacuation services, aircraft maintenance, aircraft sales and financing, charter and air taxi flights, aerial advertising, and an automated fuel station. So our quality infrastructure and planned improvements will continue to support its reliever mission and the regional demand of general aviation operations in the Bay Area. That's essentially my presentation. I can stop sharing and take a few questions if people would like. Dawn?
Thanks, Scott. That was very thorough. Appreciate that.
So Dawn, just got one point I'd like to make on that.
Mayor, former, yes.
Okay, so a very important, because we get this question a lot about noise and the fact that by law, the airport's open 24 hours a day. One of the very important strategies that the city employed when we brought in the fixed-based operator is, since we can't limit the amount or the hours that planes can come in, what the city did is by contract, we limited the FBO that it cannot provide services between 10 at night and 6 in the morning. So in other words, they can't sell gas. They can't do service on a plane. So yes, a plane can land at Livermore, but there's no reason, because they can't buy gas, they can't get their tires filled. So that was a very important strategy that we used, is we can't pass laws to restrict the planes coming in, but we did pass by contract limitations on the services that the FBO could provide. Very important strategy.
I have one very, very quick question. And I would love to hear from the airport. So there's this thing going through Nextdoor and through social media about the idea that you guys are going to be landing a bunch of 737s on this airstrip, and it doesn't look big enough for that. Any comments on that?
Yeah, the runway is as it's currently configured, very capable of handling 737s. There have been 737s landing at the airport. There was a DC-9 that was based here, which is roughly the same size. And again, if an airplane meets the weight limit criteria for the airport, we cannot restrict their operation here by federal rule. So that essentially means that they can come here. And it's my understanding that there is a project proponent that would like to have an operation here that would include 737s. When we see their application, we can talk a little bit more informed about it. So that if that comes to fruition, yes, there may be 1 or 2 737s here. It's my understanding, based on their preliminary information, that they may have 2, maybe 3 operations a week. Which means that you'd be lucky to see it if you were actually paying attention, but nothing, no commercial passenger service whatsoever. The airport is not able to accommodate that type of travel. So it would just be a maintenance facility for their aircraft.
So speaking of large aircraft, Scott, there was a military plane that landed a couple weeks ago. Do you know anything about that? I think it was an Air Force jet or something.
I was informed of that. It's my understanding that aircraft did not land. It did a part of their flight training, just did an approach and then a go around. If I could have my acting airport manager, Sean Moran, do you have a little more technical information on that incident?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yes, this is Sean. I'm the Sean Moran. I'm the interim airport manager. Sorry, my camera's not working right now, so trust that I look a little different than the logo. So yes, back on the 23rd of March, we did have what is called a Boeing C-17, so it is a military transport aircraft. They were flying up from Las Vegas to Travis Air Force Base, doing just a normal routine training flight. And as part of it, what they did was a low approach where they practiced the ILS approach into the airport as if they were going to land, but they did not in fact land. So they performed what is called a missed approach, where they regained altitude and then continued on their way to their destination over at Travis Air Force Base. We have spoken with the military airbase where that aircraft is actually based at, which is up in just south of Seattle, Washington, just to let them know that, you know, while their operation certainly is not illegal in any nature, if they do plan to, you know, conduct any training flights, and if they do plan to maybe use our airport for practicing an approach, we'd like to be notified ahead of time, or just engage with them to say, if you want to choose a different airport, because we do have the noise sensitive communities.
Okay, thank you. And then, Scott, I know you touched on it, but can you tell us what the status of the Kaiser Air proposal is? I know that's going through the process, but
The last that I've heard is that the city is anticipating an application by the end of April. So we should have more information on that. Again, until we actually receive an application that describes in detail what is being proposed, a lot of we have thus far is just their preliminary project that was presented to the Airport Commission. And what we get as an application might not be what they presented there. There may be some changes. So it's hard to speculate what'll be included. But by the end of April, we expect to have an application.
Okay, I see we're getting close to the time when you need to roll off here. But just for everyone who is viewing this, I've already extended an invitation to Kaiser Air's leadership to come and visit the Business Alliance when they do have that application submitted to the city, so we can hear more about that.
I believe we do have a Kaiser representative here, Jerry Rayleigh. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions for him. He can hang on if that's something you would like to entertain, Dawn. I didn't.
Welcome, Jerry. I don't know if anyone has any questions directly for Kaiser Air at this point in time that he is with us. Any other burning questions for Scott before he has to leave us?
I would just ask Scott, would you mind putting your contact information in the chat?
Yeah.
Just in case someone would like to reach out.
Sure. Yeah. Let me grab that and paste it real quick.
Perfect. And thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you for
Good
having
information.
me. I really appreciate it.
So one other quick point. I don't know if it happened to coincide with the that flyover, but there was an Air Force recipient of an award, a medal, at the same juxtaposition of the timing of that flyover. And there was some suggestion that the flyover may have been an honor for the recipient of that medal. So I'm not sure if Sean could speak to that, but I know that was one of the things that I had heard, that we had a B-24 flyover a couple of years ago to honor a fallen serviceman. So that might have been part of it.
Typically we are notified in advance if the Air Force or any branch of the military is going to provide any kind of ceremonial service. For example, when I worked at the Hayward Executive Airport, we had during my tenure there, we had several fallen soldiers that were laid to rest. So we had worked closely with the Air Force when they brought aircraft over for low flyovers, just to notify the community. So usually if there's something ceremonial in nature, the airport, the FAA, and whichever branch of service that is performing the ceremony, we're all in close contact with each other. So that way we can also notify members of the community to say, on this day around this time, you may see a low flying aircraft, and this is the reason why. So for this, I don't know if it was related or coinciding. I did have a chance to look at their flight log and their flight track through flight radar, and to my understanding, their path did not represent that this would have coincided with anything ceremoniously.
And Scott, real quick, what is the status of hiring or appointing the permanent general manager?
So we are getting ready to advertise for that position. And once that gets advertised, we expect, 45, 60 days of advertisement, and then the processing of the applications, and then interviews, and then ultimate hiring. We're still probably looking at least 6 months out until we have a replacement, but Sean's doing an outstanding job in the interim. So I think we're well covered until that point. And just because Jerry did take the time to come here, I would like to, Jerry, can you just give us an idea of when Kaiser does expect to submit their application?
Sure. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Soon. We're in the final stages. Scott, definitely aware of the decisions we've been evaluating over the last month regarding our project. Our project's still a go. The application's very near. We are actually looking at a local firm for the architect We already have a firm on board, CNS, who is also under contract with the airport as their engineer. They are already preparing the environmental documents to satisfy the FAA and the airport. We are looking at them for the continued process of aiding us in the application process through Planning Commission and approval. So it's soon, and I just want to make a quick comment. Scott has done, I came to the meeting a little late, technical glitches on my part, but I caught enough of Scott's presentation that he did a very good job of covering basically everything that airport does and the benefits it has for the Livermore area. Kaiser Air just simply wants to infill and add to that, enhance that. We are in the aviation business, so in that regard, we want to be a friendly participant in the business of the Tri-Valley area. Both the owner and the chief vice president or chief pilot both live within minutes of the Livermore Airport. Our vice president, senior vice president, learned to fly at Livermore. So the reason Kaiser Air is looking at Livermore is the proximity to the Bay Area. Most of this was brought up through the Airport Commission process. Scott and Sean were both present there. And we are outgrowing our facility in Oakland. Kaiser Air is based in Oakland. We also have a FBO and 2 large hangars at Sonoma County Airport, STS. But the proximity to Livermore is more advantageous. The owners of Kaiser Air have long looked at Livermore as a possibility for a business opportunity. And this was years ago, and it dates itself because once Jack London was put in, then that was the final key in the puzzle to make Livermore attractive. And I'm sure the Livermore city knew that Jack London was needed, and it opens up the south side of the airport, which is where our project is based. And just a quick answer to whether anything has changed since we presented it to the Airport Commission. Nothing's changed. We're still looking at an FBO. There's already an FBO on the airport. When Scott had the aerial photo of the airport up, if you notice all those straight little buildings down on the southeast corner, those are T-hangars. We're looking at adding T-hangars because there's a demand for T-hangars at the Livermore Airport. That's a business decision on our part, and the airport is open to that. And we're also looking at some larger hangars. There's a shortage of 60 by 60s, which are your mid-size aircraft, King Air and so on. And then the whole nuance of the 737s is what are phased that would include a larger hangar to accommodate those. We have at this time 3 737s that operate out of Oakland. Scott mentioned that no airline services will take place at Livermore, and that is absolutely correct. We don't sell tickets to those 737s. They are unique in themselves. We fly, for example, the Sharks. We fly various other sports teams. We, for example, flew now President Biden on his campaign trip. And so on. That's the type of clientele. We've even flown the Rolling Stones. But the need right now is we've outgrown our facilities in Oakland. We need a place to park them when we are not using them, and we need a place to maintain them. And that's what would mean when Scott said 2 or 3 arrivals, departures at Livermore. And literally it would be either an arrival or departure. We would not just land and take off an hour later like a normal airline. If the plane comes in, it's there for a reason to be put away in the hangar or maintained. And it may leave a week later, a day later, or a month later. And so it's not a, oh, it's land, let's wait and watch it take off type of approach. It's a very specific use, the Livermore Airport. It seems to work for us, and we are fairly confident it'll work for the airport and the Tri-Valley community, because the 737s aren't the only thing that will be coming in there for us. We have corporate jets that we still will maintain and keep in Oakland, and we, the owner of Kaiser Air has his small aircraft housed at Livermore. So the opportunity for us to expand our business into the valley is attractive. We're looking at a substantial investment in this project, and we want to make it work for Livermore, the surrounding community, and Kaiser Air. And if there's any unanswered questions, I have a few minutes and be happy to answer them.
Mr. Riley, this is Dawn Ardula. Thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to welcoming back the Kaiser Air team at a future date when you're ready to do the thorough presentation. We are running a little long today. We do have another presentation and reports. So if you would be so kind as to enter your contact info in the chat for any questions folks may have. In the meantime, that would be appreciated.
Love to. Yeah. And thanks for the invitation back, and look forward to working with the entire community there.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. If you're still on, Sean and airport team. And we look forward to more conversations in the future. I see that John Marchand has his hand up. John, if you have a real quick
question, real quick. In the application or in the materials you provided the Airport Commission, in your facility, you included TSA and customs, a couple thousand square feet for TSA. But yet we've also heard that there is going to be no passengers. So why did you include TSA and customs facilities in your materials to the Airport Commission?
John, that was an early process, and that involved actually a request from Dave, the previous airport manager, simply looking for long-term processes, because we in the airport, Scott alluded to it slightly about the international aspect of Livermore. You have a lot of high-end, big corporate entities in that area that are being squeezed out of Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, and that gives them the ability to fly internationally. We don't have to, we've already looked at taking that out, but we asked the airport to be sure they want to do that aspect out because of the corporate entity. It's definitely, it was on our original drawings because of that, because of the foresight of Dave. We don't need it for our operations. We don't have all our flights internationally, which we have them fly out of Oakland or wherever they want to fly out of. We'll go to Albuquerque and fly you internationally if you want. So that was just and it has since been taken out because it did seem to create more confusion than it was, but it was simply a long-term aspect of the airport, from my understanding.